Hello everybody. I wanted to make a quick video here, sort of immortalizing the city that we were able to build on the Twitch channel. City kind of goes, I mean the city was never actually officially named. I've never felt the need to name the cities, but it sort of has taken on the name Chat Park, although of course the city itself is not Chat Park. Chat Park exists as a nature reserve that was built with the Park Life DLC. So if we sort of come up this walkway and ignore all the visitors here, originally there were no visitors in Chat Park, but for some reason that bug that I was experiencing actually fixed itself. There was a sort of a joke or whatever that, you know, we weren't going to have visitors in the park. You know, because we live in the park, right? Chat lives in the park. Everybody that sort of either participated in chat or stealthily followed the Twitch without saying anything was immediately allocated a home in the Chat Park, sort of our little commune up here. This is sort of the original campsite that we had on Chat Park, and then it was later expanded up to here and here, and then we had to backfill areas here and here and here and such. Eventually, I don't know, we had this crazy idea to put in a watering hole type recreational area up, you know, sort of inspired by maybe the idea of like some high elevation fishing lakes or maybe some hot springs. I guess we can unpause the game here to just let the water flow a little bit. Of course, we're using a number of mods to get the water up into these areas. But I think it turned out pretty well. One of the cool things that we have going actually is this cable car system. Now I've recently cleared the traffic just to kind of allow the city to run a little bit smoother here for the final thoughts on the city. Yeah, we have cable cars that actually come up, and one of the cool things about the cable cars, we added this later, was that people are actually using these things. It was actually kind of blowing my mind that on average we were getting 20 to 30 people in each of these cable cars coming up over the Chat Park. It was great. So while tourists weren't allowed to visit the Chat Park and interact with it directly, they were able to use the cable car system to come and see what was going on. And the joke was kind of that we would, you know, we'd throw stuff at them, they'd gawk at us. It was sort of a mutually beneficial relationship between the chat living here in Chat Park and the tourists that were visiting the city. And of course, all the proceeds to the cable car ride actually went to the soup kitchens to help feed chats, so that was great. There's sort of this advanced hiking trail as well that was put in pretty early here. It kind of came down here and you could explore these caves and such and get some nice little nice photography on the theme park, also the rest of the city. Lots of great views from up here. One of the cool things was the rocket launch site that we put in, named after Big O, because Big O actually was the one that told me to build it. I had never built this building before, this rocket, the Chirper rocket launch site, and it's pretty fun actually sending the rockets up, getting a view there of the city from the rocket. At the suggestion of somebody, we downloaded a mod that allowed us to put in sort of a custom Hollywood sign, so we have a couple Chat Parks that you can see from both sides here. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how Chat Park turned out. There's sort of a bunch of little sort of campsites as you go up. This never actually got finished or filled, but that's okay. One of the cool things is we're going to have to get out of the cinematic mode to see this properly, but is that we sort of have this Jim Carrey's The Grinch sort of metro system that goes from this sort of cave here down into what is sort of Whoville down here. This is sort of, oh, I guess this somehow got disconnected. No big deal. There we go. So it's sort of a secret entrance here to get to and from Chat Park for the residents of Chat Park. People that are not in the know, regular citizens, are not aware of that metro system. One of the places that, just looking at the regular city though, this is where we actually started. And it looked very different. Of course, when we started the city, this had been completely rebuilt to sort of handle a lot more traffic yield, and also to create this area on the other side of the freeway, which ended up sort of being a tourist/commercial district here. We have the football stadium here, which is great. This fills up pretty much every single game without fail. This ends up being sort of a one-way loop here through this area, which is kind of, I don't know, I haven't done that usually for the tourist commercial sectors, but it works really well in this area here. This was actually kind of named the Cthulhu intersection. I don't know, it's just, it does look kind of squiddish, but I think it turned out really, really well. This ends up being sort of this is a one-way system here. That's kind of how it started originally. The traffic was just insane here. We added this sort of roundabout, but the whole thing is sort of like two roundabouts, sort of a square about and a roundabout sort of smashed together. But I'm really happy how it turned out. We were able to fix traffic issues that literally backed up all the way to the industrial section along this entire freeway. It was pretty bad at a point. The very first park, we'll get to the zoo in a second, that we ever made was here. I believe this is Cedar Gardens or something like that. That's the name of it. Level 1, just little city park that we made. Eventually we upgraded that and sort of combined it with Olive Park here, which uses most of the city assets. Not all of them, but city park assets. We're missing some of the higher level ones because I think when we built this we were about level 2 or level 3. Level 3 probably on the city park. Added this little pond here, which is nice. Eventually we did put in a zoo. It was sort of meant to be a little bit more claustrophobic of a zoo. A little bit more of a sort of an urban style zoo. A little bit of a custom seating area there that's sort of wigging out a little bit. But the zoo is a full feature zoo. I think we have all of the animal exhibits in here. We later did a couple little smaller little zoo type areas or themed parks. But this is our main zoo in this area. It was actually hard to get people to visit the zoo. I don't know if we really ever had more than 25 to 30 people visiting it per week. It was definitely not making us any money. But this was the initial neighborhood. The land value here is pretty high. I'm not sure exactly what caused the high land value, but it is pretty high. One of the things here was this idea that there's this big mound of dirt. This map actually was incredibly hilly. And just you can see there's no flat terrain on this map at all. It is just insane amounts of valleys and hills and rocks and things. So we saw this big hill here and it was like, okay, let's make like an office park. Usually, you know, maybe you put houses on a hill or something, but let's put a bunch of offices on here. Ended up specializing at the very top of it with tech industry. Really neat looking buildings, although they're kind of, I don't know if they really do much because only 9 people can work in this entire building, which is crazy. And then around that, we sort of then added, much later, we ended up adding commercial districts, residential districts to sort of support this large office complex here. We have sort of this quaint little farming village out here, sort of. Some sort of tenement buildings here. So this is all kind of lower income, lower education level areas so that the fields would get worked. This produces a lot of our local produce for our local grocery stores, our Whole Foods, our New Seasons and such. This is sort of the tent camping area that's available to the public. Of course, Chap Park was not available to the public for a long time. Sort of just a nice little recreational area. You can go kayaking down the river. Very cool. I think from here we sort of moved on. Actually, we skipped across this river here and we eventually moved the industrial section. We had industrial section here. It's been replaced with sort of an eco high density block, I guess. I don't think it looks the best. This is definitely not what I'm most happy about, but at the time we probably just had a bunch of residential demand and we wanted to put in some eco housing. I don't know, I just sort of filled in here. It's kind of cool that, you know, what used to be the dirty industrial ended up becoming eco sustainable housing. I think that's kind of neat. This was just, again, just sort of building out along the river here before we eventually skipped across the river. Nice little park in here. This is sort of meant to be like a peaceful park, not really good for the kids, but, you know, just kind of a walking meditation type park. Sort of in the middle of that high density residential area. But if we come over, this is the new industrial zone. These three have been here for a while, which is why most of this is all level 3 industry. This was a newer, sort of a later expansion here. It doesn't fill the space as well. I would have liked to have maybe done it a bit bigger to fill this kind of shape a bit more. But this area has handled the traffic quite well. It's sort of a system where it's a one-way only system where people sort of flow in. They get into the lane that they need to be in based on the turn that they need to make, based on the exit they need to make off of this freeway. So it ended up, we never had traffic issues within the industrial zone ever, which is pretty cool. We have pedestrian pathways that help get the pedestrians around, because we do actually get a lot of pedestrians sort of using these, especially when the train comes, drops people off. You actually can get quite a bunch of pedestrians walking around on this thing, which is pretty cool. It's really neat. Just walking to work after they train to work. Then we wanted to come over here and sort of do a hexagon-based section of the city. This, of course, being sort of like a half hexagon that sort of melds into the only true full hexagon into another sort of half hexagon. This ended up being a large tourist area here, including the space elevator, which of course spawns many, many tourists who have pocket cars. But this is a huge public transportation hub. We have ferry, monorail, blimp. Way too many people want to get on the blimp. I don't know. I wish we could somehow prevent that by raising the ticket prices or something. We got some cabs by the airport. Lots of parking. We actually have a large football stadium here, sports complex, including this one. I believe this is an asset from the workshop, but I believe this also works as an expo center. And this also connects in with train. So we have train, metro. We have all the things here. It's just a big hub for tourism and also just public transportation. Nor the water treatment plants. Those are all the eco versions of them, though, so we're not actually creating much pollution in that area. This is the Spaghetti Junction, which usually has a lot more traffic on it. But I'm really happy with how this turned out. Cars seem to be going rather slow, though. The game is actually running kind of poorly in the cinematic mode, I've noticed. And this is part of the reason why we're sort of coming to a close on this city, but Spaghetti Junction was pretty fantastic. If we look at it outside of the cinematic mode, we can see that it's a 4-way in, 4-way out system. I guess effectively becomes a little bit more than 4 out if you count this is a different one than this, but it's not. It's really the same, right? There's 4 exits off of this. There's 4 entries on. But the cool thing is it's sort of like a no merge intersection, right? If we look at Traffic Manager mod here and some of the adjustments we've done to the lanes, once they get to this point, they're locked in. Where they need to go is fixed once they get to this point. And they're fixated into their lane here up until this point. So this is the only area they're allowed to merge. But we've optimized the sort of ons with the offs so that the person that's coming on, they're sort of already sort of in a lane that makes sense to where they would need to go off. So just for an example here, if we're following this, these people, of course, coming from this part of the city most likely need to go out here or here. They don't need to go back into the city. They're coming from the city. So if we watch them, they're going to be the outside lane. In the outside lane, if we follow it, the 2 outside lanes are the ones that go out. So these people coming on the outside lane here, you'll notice that a lot of the times they don't change lanes. They don't need to change lanes. They're allowed to, but they don't need to. These people are just like, they're coming in on the outside lane, they're leaving on the outside lane. So there's just a really awesome efficiency there. I'm really happy with Spaghetti Junction. Really happy with it. Here's the rocket launch site. Not quite ready to launch a rocket. I might have to make a separate video to do a final rocket launch, like a nighttime rocket launch, just to add on to the end of this video, these final thoughts here. And yeah, so that area ended up turning out pretty well. It was kind of fun doing the hexagon thing. Hexagons are really great for the trams too. We had tram system all through there. So I think once the hexagons were sort of concluding, we ended up coming over here and creating this sort of eyeball district here. I'm not really super happy with this area. It was really just meant to fulfill the demand, just a big blob. There was two goals with this area. One, it was just to, you know, satisfy the demand that we were getting. And then also I wanted to see if we could boost traffic to the theme park, the chat theme park here, which doesn't stand out too much. I noticed we realized that the theme park was a little bit too spread out. A little bit too spread out. And it kind of made it seem a little bit just empty and hard to even tell that we're looking at a theme park there, for crying out loud. But the point of the story is we're trying to get more people to go to the theme park. So we're like, hey, let's develop around it. And it worked. The theme park was the park in the city that was getting the most usage. Although I wouldn't ever say it was getting a lot of usage or enough to make a profit. I'm actually really happy with how this terraced sort of sustainable eco housing up here turned out. This turned out pretty nice. And then naturally, once we started developing out here, we had to create like a sort of a system here that could handle the higher traffic. So this is sort of like just a basic clover field, but it also has, what makes it non-basic is it does have the little collector lanes on the side. And if we check this out, this is kind of cool. It's kind of goofy. It's not really realistic or anything, but it's sort of, we have this tunnel, this roundabout tunnel that comes into underneath the office park, where people actually get off the freeway here in 3 different areas around this hill, which I think turned out pretty cool. So that's kind of neat. Lots of traffic through this area. Honestly, we actually fixed all the traffic here. One of the issues, again, one of the reasons why we're moving on to a new city is because Traffic Manager mod updated, and it ended up kind of breaking the city a bit. The traffic issue here wasn't an issue, and now it is. So I don't know, you know, we could fiddle with it and fix it again and again and again, but it's just, at this point, it's just time to start a new city. This is sort of our donut, and we have sort of like a police headquarters in the middle of the donut. But yeah, this was just sort of like a big area that we just wanted to fill in. That was the goal, just fill it in, fill it in, fill it in. Here though, this is sort of like the latest developing. Happened this way, and the idea here was just to kind of fill around Chat Park. And I think it all turned out pretty well. The spacing here is maybe a little awkward. This was actually the newest thing we did, just because, like, from the rocket perspective, it looked like this was kind of just an awkwardly empty area. So, but if we look here, we have some more sustainable housing. I think these actually look kind of nice. They kind of look like real neighborhoods to me from about this distance. When you zoom in, they definitely look special. But from here, that kind of like pseudo-uniformity kind of makes it look like a real city to me. Neighborhoods do tend to have a lot of copy and pasted buildings. You know, they use the same blueprints and they just adjust, like, maybe it's a mirror image. One building is a mirror image of the other or something like that. There tends to be a lot of repetitive buildings in a neighborhood. So I think that looks pretty nice. But if we come along here, we have sort of a really nice little roundabout system here, which ended up working out super, super well. One of the things is we're not connecting to the freeway in this section, right? So you either come in this way and you go through the roundabout system to get to this part of town, or you come in this way and then you can sort of flow into the city there. So the idea was to kind of prevent people from being able to get right off the freeway into this area and force them to go through this roundabout system. And the roundabout system worked really, really well. It worked really well. We have some forestry here just for fun. Just a little bit of extra specialized industry. This area turned out fantastically, I think. Fantastically. This sort of ended up being sort of beach house type housing. It reminds me very much of the Pacific Northwest, the coast on the Pacific Northwest, kind of like some of the housing developments where, like, it's very steep, overlooks the water, but it's not really directly on the beach, right? But this is still sort of beach style housing. I also was sort of calling this rib cage housing. I don't know, it kind of looks like a rib cage to me a little bit. But I don't, maybe the high density wasn't needed, but I think it looks okay. This is proper sort of maybe like California style beach houses here. But I think the housing there was really cool, and this all supports sort of this large commercial, tourist and commercial and offices. We have some tech industry here as well. We have sort of a couple little parks here, custom parks. We have one here that's sort of like a little theme park meets city park. And then we sort of do that again out here with sort of the boardwalk style thing, where we have the marine exhibit here. We have this ancient castle unique building. This is really cool, actually. That's really neat. So you can come out here and explore the castle, go to the theme park. A little bit of custom prop placement here, the little eating area by the water, some areas to sit and look out into the ocean. Kind of a cool little area. Yeah, the whole thing, of course, focused around this giant roundabout, a few different roundabouts throughout here. I think that area turned out pretty nicely. And then we have the ferry area, the town that literally is only accessible via ferry. People can only get to this area. It's sort of meant to be like a big industrial park, sort of, you know, lots of local produce. We just added this normal industry. We probably didn't have to do that, but forestry and local produce, or farming, just general farming area. And these trucks come in and they export all of the goods here, basically. What isn't sort of used locally is purely just exported via this terminal here. We either ship or train form. Of course, we get in a lot of freight from the ships as well, but most of the time the freight that comes in via the outside cities just turns into a cargo train. So yes, imported goods from ships can immediately go directly to trains and be sent to the city. So this is one of the ways that we're getting more goods into the city, which is really cool. And this area is literally only connected via ferry. And people will literally, I kid you not, people will actually move to that area via just ferry, which is really neat. So this is the big ferry conga line. These things, I think what happened is when we cleared traffic, it actually cleared the ferries, but you can see absolutely no one looking to get to the new area. But if we build some housing, if there was demand for people out there in the whatever we want to call this district, we would get people coming here via ferry, which is really cool. Really cool. I think the other sort of system that we have set up for importing goods is here. Sort of just this self-sustaining little area. Garbage and police, just so it doesn't complain about crime. What's really interesting about this map, Cavern Coast, which was added with the Park Life DLC, is there's no outside train connection. So that's why we had to build these systems to get goods from the outside world, because otherwise we had to produce all the goods ourselves, which is a little tricky for a city this size. So it is nice to be able to get more imported goods. We can get them via the freeway, and we were, but of course this reduces the traffic a little bit. But yeah, Chat Park, or whatever we wanted to call the city, it turned out exceptionally well. I'm really happy with it. We ended up spending almost probably 80 to 100 hours on it, which actually blows my mind. We had I think we played it for about 18 to 19 nights, which are about 4 hours each. Ends up being about 5 hours each, probably. So yeah, we put about 100 hours into the city. It was a lot of fun. Learned a lot. It was really cool. It was really neat. So yeah, I think one thing that we're gonna do is we're going to take a pause here, and then we're going. Oh, we gotta send the zombies up to space. That's one thing we've been using the rockets for, is relocating the zombies to space. But let's take a quick pause here. We'll be back. We'll launch a rocket as a farewell. We'll sail up in a rocket and see the city at night. And then that'll be the end of the final thoughts. I'm really excited for the next city that we're going to be working on, although I still don't know what we're going to do for it. But thanks so much for hanging out and checking out Chat Park. I will see you guys in a second. Hello everybody, and we're back. Let's see the city at night here one last time from the rocket's perspective. It's a classic way to enjoy Chat Park. You can actually see Chat Park up here. Everybody's nestled in their watchtowers and out in front of their tents with their hot cocoa, ready to watch the rocket. Stadium looks nice and lit up. Always impressed with the skybox in this game. Really happy with how the city turned out. Really happy. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. I will see you guys in the next one.